Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen.
Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth.
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 73, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It is Friday, August the 2nd, and I'm in the shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama, just so I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. So, I gotta tell you, I live like a block from the city park. So, every now and then, before or right after dinner, my wife and I, Mrs. Shed, will walk the children to the park and let them play. Let them run off some of that excess energy that they always seem to have. If you listen to the show for a while, you are aware that I have 2 children. I have a daughter who is currently 8 and a son who just turned 4. And we're at the park. My daughter is over on the climbing wall. My son is in the area for younger children, all within eyesight because I'm a good parent, okay? Daddy Duck watches over his ducklings. And my wife and I are standing there next to our son, the 4-year-old, big man. And this white child, I know, but it's an important detail, just keep that in mind. This white child comes running across the park eagerly, with a look of joy spread across his face. And he runs up to my son and he says, "Santos!" And my son puts out his hands like, what? And looks up at his mother and then at me. And we look back at him with the same expression. We don't know what's going on. Then the little child looks up at my wife and says, "Is this Santos?" To which she replies, "No." And the little boy goes, "What?" And looks all around the park and walks away. Just walks away. Now I am a white man. I'm not one of those kind of whites. I know I live in Alabama, but I do have rhythm. I'm not one of the I don't season my chicken whites, okay? I keep my sheets on the bed, if you know what I'm saying. But I am a white man. Mrs. in the Shed is Pacific Islander. But our children, though not quite as pale as me, they don't really look like they might be Santoses, if you know what I'm saying. My son has dark hair and he has dark eyes, but he looks like my son. He has features from both sides of his families, but doesn't look like a Santos. A half hour passes and we're sitting there, and then my son whispers to us, "Mom, Dad." And we said, "What, buddy?" He pointed all the way across the park. "Who's that boy?" And we look, and there's a little boy over there, and we say, I don't know. I don't know who that is." And he says, so seriously, in a whisper, "I think that's Santos." We couldn't find Santos. He's here. He's here somewhere. He's with all of us. He might be listening to the show right now. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to some comments and corrections from our last episode. Our humble little show is being listened to across the globe, 68 countries in total and counting. And hey, I'm rooting for every one of you in the Olympics. America first. And that's not a political statement. I'm just saying USA, USA, USA. But I'm rooting for all of you in the Olympics. We are, of course, being listened to all over this great country of ours, all 50 states and counting. But we are still continuing to grow in popularity worldwide as well. The United States now makes up a record high 54% of our listening audience, followed by India at 34%, which means that 88% of our total audience come from the US and India. Quick math. After the US and India, our top 10 countries as far as listeners goes continues with Canada, the UK, France, China, Australia, Mexico, Germany, and Malaysia hanging in there at number 10. I want to give a special shout out to our 16 new listeners this week in Hungary. Hey, me too. See ya, Hungary. We're currently averaging more listeners per episode than ever before. Still true thanks to you. In fact, during our unplanned 4-month hiatus recently, we surpassed 12,000 downloads all time. We're climbing. We're building. We're grinding, my babies. We're using action verbs in the shed. We're still adding followers over on X. You can find us there at In the Shed 4. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at In the Shed with Wes Anderson 6670. Couple ways that you can support the show. One is by sharing it with a friend. Word of mouth is still how we grow. And by joining our membership club over at patreon.com/intheshed4. You can donate as little as $1 or subscribe for exclusive content for as little as $4 a month. If you keep supporting the show, I'll keep bringing you the news. You subscribe, like, share, and we will keep growing this thing together. We got a great show for you today, jam-packed with news, but first let's get to some listener emails. Our first email comes from David from San Antonio, Texas, who writes, Wes, I enjoyed your emergency broadcast laying out the facts as we knew them 2 weeks out from the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. I hadn't seen any other journalist, I am a journalist, thank you, David, lay them out in such a succinct fashion. I get the Secret Service making mistakes, but doesn't this look like an inside job to you? Honestly, no, David. It doesn't look like an inside job to me. And like I said on the show last week, I understand why people are asking questions and why they feel that way. The complete lack of transparency, the lack of answers, the complete ineptitude by the Secret Service to protect a leading presidential candidate and former president is alarming and opens up the realm of possibilities, to include conspiracy, to include things that should be unspeakable but that we know often happen. However, with the facts coming out more and more as far as the steps that the Secret Service did not take, and even a video from a local policeman on the scene, on the roof, from which the shooter took shots at Donald Trump right after he had been killed and law enforcement responded. That local law enforcement officer said something to the effect of, not a direct quote, but something to the effect of, it appears that there are about 8 shell casings surrounding him. And when you listen to the audio, when you look at the shots that were taken, there appears to be 3 shots fired, then 5 more in rapid succession, and then 1 final shot that took the life of the shooter, Matthew Thomas Crooks. So while I understand the sentiment at this point, it does not appear, there does not seem to be evidence pointing to other governments being involved, other shooters being involved, this being an inside job. It looks like criminal negligence to me. Thank you for writing into the show, David. Our next email comes from Lady N from Nashville, Tennessee, who says, Wes, what do you think of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance labeling the vice president as a DEI hire and questioning her blackness. I think it's a non-starter, Lady N. Thank you for listening to the show and for writing in. I think it is, no matter what you think of Donald Trump or J.D. Vance, a political miscalculation. Hey, what are your policies versus hers? How are you going to lead our country different than the way her and Biden have for the last 4 years? What is there that is broken that you're going to fix? These are the things that the American people, and especially those who are still persuadable voters, care about. When it comes to vice presidents, most of them are DEI hires. Most of them are chosen only so that the president can do better in a certain part of the country or state, or because they bring something to the table when it comes to identity that the presidential candidate does not have. So, I think it is a miscalculation. I think that it's a distraction. I don't think that it's helpful. And finally, Dane from Alabama. Hey, Dane. My fellow countryman, Dane from Alabama writes, Wes, what do you make of Democrats calling Trump and his supporters weird? I think it's completely non-substantive. I don't think that it is helpful, and I think, again, it is a distraction from what actually matters. It doesn't really mean anything, and it even could be offensive to those that you're trying to win over and get the vote of. I don't know what they mean by weird. Are they trying to say that Donald Trump and his supporters are weird, but they and their supporters are normal? What is weird? What is normal? Who is defining these terms? I don't think that people who run for office and who ascend to the throne of power in American politics are normal. Any of them. I think you can take video and clips from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Mitch McConnell, and the whole like, and easily classify them as weird. Again, what are your policies? What are you actually going to accomplish? How is your being in charge of our country going to benefit the American people? That's what I care about. Thank you for writing in, Dane. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. Kamala coronation complete, steals nomination from 14 million Democrats who voted Biden, writes Breitbart. Oil giant Chevron ditches California for friendly Texas, reports the New York Post. Israel's strike on its enemies show a high appetite for risk, says the Wall Street Journal. From CBS News, Trump wants to cut Social Security taxes. How would that affect benefits? And finally, is Tim Walz the Midwestern dad Democrats need? And that is asked by the New York Times. Our first story in the world of politics: their brutal ordeal is over. Biden hails largest prisoner swap since Cold War. President Joe Biden said Thursday a prisoner swap that freed Wall Street Journal Evan Gershkovich and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan from Russia custody resulted from a feat of diplomacy and friendship. Their brutal ordeal is over, and they are free, Biden said from the White House. With several of the freed prisoners' family members standing behind them, Biden said Russia had wrongly convicted them in show trials and sentenced them to long prison terms with absolutely no legitimate reason whatsoever. Biden said he and families were able to speak to the prisoners a few moments earlier on the phone from the Oval Office. They're out of Russia, he said. Earlier today, they were flown to Turkey. Soon they will be wheels up on their way home to see their families. It's an incredible relief. Asked by reporters what he told them over the phone, Biden answered, "Welcome almost home." And that's funny. I don't care who you are, that's funny. Welcome almost home. Gershkovich and Whelan were released from Russian custody Thursday as a part of the biggest prisoner exchange between Washington, Moscow, and 4 other governments since the Cold War. The exchange of 24 prisoners follows months of negotiations and marks a rare moment of cooperation between Russia and its geopolitical adversaries in the West after more than 2 years of Russia's war in Ukraine. The prisoner swap involves the release of 16 individuals previously detained in Russia in exchange for 8 individuals held in the U.S., Germany, Norway, Slovenia, and Poland, where we have 5 listeners in Poland. Shout out to you, Poland. Turkish intelligence had announced that it agreed to provide logistical support to facilitate the swap. In July, Gershkovich was convicted unusually swiftly on espionage charges he denies. He was given 16 years in jail. The previous largest prisoner swap with Russia took place in 2010, involving 14 people. Gershkovich was held in Russia for 17 months. Whelan, a former U.S. Marine, had been in prison in Russia since December 2018 on espionage charges his family and the U.S. government have called baseless. The U.S. classified him as wrongly detained. Whelan was convicted by Russia in 2020 of spying and was sentenced to 16 years in a maximum security prison colony. In addition to the American citizens and green card holder, he said Russian political dissidents who are being released can now live safely abroad, and that should make Americans proud. Biden also took a dig at his predecessor, former President Donald Trump, saying that one of his first acts as president-elect was to dig into the cases of wrongfully detained Americans he was inheriting from the prior administration. In all, he said more than 70 Americans who were wrongfully detained or held hostage have been released during his administration. Asked by reporters about Trump's repeated claims that he could have gotten the prisoners freed without giving away anything in return, Biden shot back, why didn't he do it when he was president? Biden, who is leaving office in January, said that he would continue to work to bring wrongfully detained Americans home. The families, he said, never gave up hope. Turning to Whelan's sister, he said the public can't imagine what the families have been through. He patted and took her hand. Near the end of his news conference, Biden brought to the lectern Miriam Buterin, daughter of Russian-American journalist Alsu Karmasheva, who was among those prisoners freed. Biden gave the young girl a hug and had the room sing happy birthday to her. Miriam turns 13 on Friday. Happy birthday, Miriam. Remember, no serious guys till you're 30, Biden teased Miriam. And that's a little strange. Not the point. I digress. Turning serious, he said, now she gets a chance to celebrate with her mom. That's what this is all about. Family. Able to be together again. Like they should have been all along. And that is what it's all about. So, I've been clear with you on this show, okay? I did not vote for Donald Trump. I did not vote for Joe Biden. I am a registered independent. I get feedback all the time. Oh, you're just a Trump supporter. Oh, you're just a left wing. No. I'm for the people. But if you're covering news honestly, which we try to do on this show, we keep it 100 with you. Every president elected, no matter who they are, Washington through Biden, have done some good things and have done some negative things when they are in office. When they do things that are not good for our country, it should be held to account. When they do things that are positive, it should be recognized and celebrated. And this is a positive thing. We're starting off the show today with some good news. We have plenty of news to cover that isn't good. Most news isn't, but hey, we're starting off with some good news today. Because American citizens have been returned home. People who had done nothing wrong but had been convicted of espionage and kangaroo courts in Russia and used as political pawns have been brought home and reunited with their families. These are husbands, fathers, brothers, children. This is a good thing. No matter your political leaning, this is something that you should celebrate. And the fact that Joe Biden has, in his administration, brought home 70 such people who are wrongfully detained is something that he has done while in office that should be celebrated. Paul Whelan, who served our country and had been over in Russian prisons for 6 years, is now reunited with his family. The Wall Street Journal reporter is home and free. He had done nothing wrong. All he had done was be a journalist and be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's now being reunited with his family, as have several others. And this is not a situation where you should look at it and go, well, who else was released and who were they and what are they guilty of? Look, the people that Russia had detained had committed no crime. So any trade that we made would not be one for one. It would not be equal because we're not imprisoning people just because they're Russian, as far as I know, in this country. But the main takeaway here is thank you, Biden administration. Job well done. The fact that even when the war is raging between Russia and Ukraine, we haven't even picked up the phone and talked to anyone in Russia for some time, which I don't understand. With them being a world power, as many nukes as they have, I don't understand. But hey, we were able to find a way to make this happen diplomatically and to get these people home. That's a dose of good news. That's something to be celebrated. That's something for the Biden-Harris administration to be commended for. And we keep it honest with you on the show. So we will. I'm glad that Americans are home with their families again, that they're experiencing the freedom that our country promises. Job well done. Our next story in the world of politics, Mr. Beast, YouTube's biggest star, acknowledges past inappropriate language as controversies swirl. Mr. Beast, YouTube's biggest star and a philanthropic force with nearly unrivaled influence among young audiences, acknowledged Wednesday that he used inappropriate language in his early online days as numerous controversies bubbled up around him and a former collaborator. Mr. Beast, whose real name is Jimmy Donaldson and has a reported $700 million empire, have come under fire in recent weeks after accusations of past racist comments by Donaldson surfaced along with allegations that a longtime colleague made inappropriate advances towards minors. When Jimmy was a teenager, he acted like many kids and used inappropriate language while trying to be funny, a spokesperson for the YouTuber said in a statement to the Associated Press. Over the years, he's repeatedly apologized and has learned that increasing influence comes with increased responsibility to be more aware and more sensitive to the power of language. After making some bad jokes and other mistakes when he was younger, as an adult he's focused on engaging with the Mr. Beast community to work together on making a positive impact around the world. His highly produced videos of whimsical challenges and lavish gifts, often accompanied by expressive thumbnails and punchy titles, have drawn a record 307 million YouTube subscribers. And we have 31. His latest uploads includes ages 1 through 100 decide who wins $250,000, and I built 100 houses and gave them away, which like most of his videos garnered more than 100 million views. The philanthropic sector has received this content with a mix of praise for encouraging direct generosity and criticism of exploitative inspiration. Donaldson's greater ambition made itself plain in recent years through the launch of his snack brand Feastables, a branded burger chain with reviews bad enough that he sued the company behind it, and an Amazon Prime Video deal for a 1,000-contestant reality competition show. But before overtaking YouTube with his often absurd charitable acts, Donaldson built a sizable following as a gaming content creator who sometimes interacted with viewers on live streams. In a 2017 clip circulated by YouTube influencer Rosanna Pansino in a July 24 post on X, Donaldson responded to a viewer who commented about selling black people for money and said, "The most I would pay is probably $300. Donaldson also used a homophobic slur at multiple points in the conversation. After one commenter repeated a racial slur, Donaldson eventually instructed his audience to stop using that word in the chat. Pansino told the AP that she'd worked on various potential business ventures with Donaldson over the last several years, though none ever launched. Last fall, she complained publicly about an edit of her appearance in a Mr. Beast video, though eventually deleted the post after she said she received death threats from fans online. Pansino said that contrary to popular opinion, it's just not true that Donaldson has always made family-friendly content. His first videos where he was trying to be an edgy gamer and a streamer, and he said horrible things and nasty things. I didn't know that, Pansino said. I had no idea what his history was. In a separate clip from a May 2017 podcast appearance, Donaldson suggested that he would get to know biblically, if you catch my phrase. This is a family show. But that he would get to know biblically Bad Baby, whose real name is Danielle Bergoli, that's the Catch Me Outside girl, and who was 14 years old at the time. The video has since been removed for violating YouTube's community guidelines. Podcast co-host Leon Lush defended Donaldson in a video posted on X last week. Lush said that Donaldson clarified later on the episode that he wouldn't do that because Bergoli was way too young, and had joked that they should say something offensive that people can take out of context. Lush added that the recording is cringe in hindsight and dismissed the outcry as a molehill turning into a mountain. Being unfunny seems like the worst offense here. When you mix a propensity for dark humor with blind ambition, you get this content sometimes, Lush said. Was being edgy the best strategy? Certainly not, although it did work sometimes as far as getting attention. Those clips emerged as internet sleuths alleged that longtime Mr. Beast collaborator Ava Chris Tyson interacted inappropriately with minors online. Under scrutiny are Tyson's past conversations with an underage teenage fan, including public posts where the two discussed inappropriate images and anime inappropriateness. The fan denied any exploitation in a July 22nd post on X describing such accusations as massive lies and twistings of the truth. In a July 24th post on X, Nate Wyman said that he and the fan had done unpaid technical work running Tyson's streams and would all play video games together for hours on end. Wyman said that Tyson had a previous Discord server with about 10 people, mostly minors around 14 years old, and would frequently spam the server with inappropriate images and videos. Tyson announced her departure from all things Mr. Beast and social media in a July 23rd post on X. Donaldson posted on July 24th that he was disgusted and opposed to such unacceptable acts and is hiring independent investigators to look into the allegations. Tyson has been the target of transphobic attacks since she came out last year as transgender. Last April, Donaldson defended his close friend against a video describing her as a nightmare for Mr. Beast. Donaldson wrote on X then that this is getting absurd, affirmed their friendship, and said this transphobia was starting to anger him. Last week, a former employee accused Donaldson of rigging the contest in his videos, running illegal lotteries, and deceiving his fans. The person made the sweeping accusation under an alias in a YouTube video that has reached over 6.9 million viewers since it was posted last week. Donaldson has not publicly responded to the unsubstantiated claims. Chucky Appleby, who co-founded the YouTube analytics platform ViewStats alongside Donaldson, said the former employee was fired within a month after displaying erratic behavior. In a July 29 post on X, Appleby denied accusations that Mr. Beast fakes videos and said it would have been impossible to hide scripted segments from the countless people on set. Jimmy spends unfathomable amounts of money and time to ensure the integrity of what he does, Appleby said. I hate to see it come into question with a bunch of lies. AP direct messaged several social media users behind the range of accusations, as well as the underage fan. Matthew Wade, a Latrobe University sociology lecturer focused on ethics and charity, credited Beast Philanthropy for establishing partnerships with esteemed philanthropic organizations. The tone and occasional crassness of Donaldson's style might have been well worth his truly extraordinary reach for nonprofits eager to drive support toward their causes, Wade told AP in an email. But risk calculations could shift, he said. Charities and philanthropic foundations cannot gamble with their reputation, Wade said. They must be seen as above reproach, and the steady accumulation of controversies around the Mr. Beast brand may too easily tarnish the pristine glow of their own. So, this isn't the type of story that I normally would find newsworthy or cover on a show like ours. We cover all kinds of things, but I don't typically talk about content creators on the show. But this is different because if you don't know who Mr. Beast is, your kids do. If you don't know who Mr. Beast is, your grandchildren do. If you don't know who Mr. Beast is, your younger sibling does. This guy has more reach than Stretch Armstrong, okay? He's in everybody's tiny glowing screen. And there is a heap of controversy bubbling up around him and those he chooses to surround himself with. Allegations of inappropriate behavior with minors, allegations of fraudulent business practices and misleading videos and sweepstakes. And I guess they're not allegations because there's video out there, but also that when he was up and coming, he apparently used a lot of problematic language, which a lot of gamers do. A lot of gamers do. It's never a good sign when you are a content creator someone who parks your face in front of a camera for a living, and you have a PR machine come out and make a statement for you, hey, that's not a good look. Now, I don't know if the stuff that they're alleging against him and his cohorts is true or not, but I think it reminds us of the importance of the voices that we listen to, even in our entertainment, the ones whose perspective and ideas shape our own. And unfortunately, this kind of thing is happening all the time in the content creation world, because these are people whose entire business model is to get attention. That's the whole deal, is to get attention, to get more eyeballs, to get more clicks, to get more views, more follows, more subscriptions. And too many people will do anything for them. That's not us here on In the Shed. We only have 31 subscribers on YouTube. After 3 years of grinding, we only have just over 12,000 downloads all time. And this is an audio-only podcast. You don't get to see my beautiful face. It's a face for radio, I assure you. But this story is news, and it's noteworthy because of the incredible reach that Mr. Beast has, the influence he has on the younger generations, the amount of money that he has amassed. And I'm not saying that he's never done anything good, or that none of his philanthropic videos came from a good place. I'm just saying you have to be careful whose voice fills your airwaves, what your children are watching, who they're connecting with online. And if you are a content creator, you have to be careful not to lose yourself in the algorithm, in the race for clicks, cutting corners and sacrificing principles to get more subscribers. It looks like a bare minimum, at least some of that was going on here. I'll be interested to see what happens with him and his channel moving forward, what comes of these allegations, and we'll keep an ear to the ground. What do you think about the Mr. Beast situation? Do you think it is a mountain being made out of a molehill? Do you find the allegations credible? Do you watch Mr. Beast? Did you watch him before all this? Will you watch him after? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4. I would love to hear from you. Our next story in the world of politics: American woman found in Indian forest had been chained to a tree for 40 days. An American woman has been found chained to a tree in an Indian forest where she had been 40 days, triggering a manhunt for her former husband. Lalita Kaya Kumar, 49, was found by a shepherd in a forest near Sunurli village, Goa, after he heard her crying for several days. Unable to speak following her rescue, she wrote a note that alleged her ex-husband had left her to die and that she'd been without food for 40 days. She also claimed she was administered an injection for extreme psychosis, which causes severe jaw lock and inability to drink any water. Need intravenous food later. Husband tied me to a tree in forest, she wrote. Miss Kumar was found with her legs tied to the tree but her hands unbound. A police officer said she was too weak to unchain herself. There were also reportedly marks from numerous other injuries on her body. She was wearing a see-through raincoat, an olive green shirt, and worn-out brown trousers when found. Police have registered a case of attempted murder against her former husband, who's accused of chaining her up before he escaped. Relatives of the couple are being interviewed by police. Ms. Kumar was transferred to Goa Medical College for specialist treatment after doctors raised concerns about her mental health. A hospital official said she's out of danger, but is suffering from severe depression and other mental health illnesses. We found medical prescriptions in her possession suggesting she was on antidepressants. Documents found on Ms. Kumar show that she was a resident of Tamil Nadu, a South Indian state about 600 miles away from the forest where she was found. It is thought that she had been living in India for the past decade. So, I make no bones about the fact that I have great love for the nation and the people and the culture of India. Y'all my ride or die. You make up 34% of my listening audience, possibly even some of you in the state of Goa. And no actions of one person are representative of an entire nation or group of people. Let's get that out of the way. However, this is an incredible story and one that we've got to talk about on the show tonight. This woman who had been living in India for over a decade was found chained to a tree in a forest, a 10-hour drive away from where she lived. And somehow after 40 days of being chained to a tree with no food and water, she was found alive and well enough to even write a note. It's an incredible story of survival. I know it's a horrific story of dastardly acts done to someone being treated far less than human, but it's also a story of incredible survival. I don't know how long you can live without water. I know you can live a long time without food, 40 days, okay. You can't live 40 days without water. She must have had some water at the beginning and ran out or something. She must have been finding some way to get some H2O. She was found by a shepherd. I'm not saying it was Jesus, but that man was a good shepherd because he found her and saved her and rescued her, and I'm glad that she has gotten the medical treatment that she needs. I can't imagine things getting so bad that you take your wife to a forest 10 hours away and chain her to a tree. It seems to me that the one with the most severe mental health issues in the marriage is that guy. Because whatever she's dealing with and going through to treat a human being like that is reprehensible. And my guess is, as the police and investigators interview the family, they will figure out where this guy is, and he will have to face justice. Marriage is hard. Living with another human being in committed relationship is hard. But hey, if that's how you feel, just walk away and get a divorce. Take your life somewhere else. Don't take that person's life. I hate that this woman had to go through what she did. On the one hand, this story is tragic. On the other hand, it's also a miracle that she was found, that she survived, that she's alive today. And I haven't seen this story reported anywhere. I found it buried on page 10 or 12 of one of the news sites that we scour when we put together our news board for this show. But I wanted to share it here, not just because I have a large listening audience in India, which I do. Put me on a billboard in India. I want to be on a billboard in India. But also because it was an incredible story of survival, and in my estimation, a full-blown miracle. That this woman, despite what was done to her, that she survived, that she was found, that she is alive today. An incredible story. One that I thought was worth sharing with you, my people. Our last story in the world of politics this week: Crestview woman charged with animal cruelty for drowning roommate spider in ginger ale. And it wouldn't be In the Shed with Wes Anderson if we didn't close out our political news segment for the week with a story like this. A true Florida man story, except for this time it's a Florida woman. We go from Americans set free from a hostage situation in Russia, to the problems surrounding Mr. Beast, to a woman who survived a horrific event in India, to a Florida woman arrested and charged with animal cruelty for drowning her roommate spider in a very specific beverage, ginger ale. Ironically, one that is normally used to make you feel better when you're sick. At least that's how we do it in the South. I digress. A Crestview woman was charged with animal cruelty on Monday after taking her roommate's pet jumping spider and drowning it in ginger ale according to an arrest report. The arrest report states that 43-year-old Elena Rasmussen texted her roommate and admitted to drowning the jumping spider after the roommate said she could not find her pet spider or its cage. According to the report, Rasmussen took the $70 spider while Marrero was away from their shared home. Rasmussen was released from Okaloosa County Jail on Monday. And that's the entire article. That's the whole thing. 4 sentences, 2 paragraphs. It's over. And I have so many questions. So, this happened in a town that I am very familiar with. I used to live 30 minutes outside of this town. In fact, it's where my daughter was born, Crestview, Florida, because we lived in a town that didn't have a hospital adequate for childbirth. So my daughter was born in the town where a lady drowned her roommate spider in ginger ale. And the questions I have about this story are numerous. First of all, this woman is getting arrested for drowning a spider at the age of 43. Which leads me to question what she's doing with the rest of her life. That at 43 years old, she's being arrested for animal cruelty for drowning a spider. And what made her choose ginger ale? Was water not available? Is ginger ale her favorite beverage of choice? Was it what was available in the fridge at the time? Can you imagine being Miss Rasmussen's family and this is all over the news? This is what your relative is up to on a random Tuesday. Apparently the spider was a jumping spider. I don't know what that means. I don't know how big it was. Was it the size of a tarantula? It was $70 in value, so it was something. It wasn't just a spider that this lady picked up from outside and put in a terrarium, I think is the correct terminology. Terrarium, vocabulary word of the day. So her roommate comes home, apparently can't find her spider, can't find its cage. And then Mrs. Rasmussen admits over text message that she disposed of the spider by drowning it, not smushing it, not flushing it, not stomping on it, not setting it free outside, but drowning it in Canada Dry. And I guess I do feel bad for the spider, and for the pet owner. You don't want to lose your pet. Maybe she had a very, very intimate bond with her spider. I guess maybe some people can love spiders. Not my pet of choice, but hey, different strokes for different folks, I guess. Florida woman arrested for animal cruelty for drowning her roommate's spider in ginger ale. And that's the news in the world of politics. That's how we do it. On In the Shed with Wes Anderson, I don't understand why you would get your news anywhere else. Pour one out for Charlotte and put some flowers on her web. That's all the news this week in the world of politics. Let's switch to the news in the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Team USA sets new world record in 4x400 mixed relay. U.S. men's Olympic soccer team out after rout versus Morocco. Seahawks get good report on quarterback Geno Smith's injury. Bears defeat Texans 21-17 in storm-shortened Hall of Fame game. John Calipari exhorting Razorbacks to think like kings. Top basketball recruit A.J. Dybantsa cuts list to Auburn, Alabama, Baylor, BYU, Kansas, Kansas State, and North Carolina. Georgia wide receiver Ra Thomas kicked off team after most recent arrest. And finally, forward Gordon Hayward retires from the NBA. First up this week in the world of sports, we're going to talk a little bit of college football which is fast approaching. I think, 3 more Saturdays, and we will have football again. And I can't wait. We will break down the SEC, the playoff picture. We will release our preseason top 25 in coming episodes. Some very awesome news to report in that regard. Stay tuned. But I want to touch just briefly on our show tonight about one of my teams, my favorite team, the Auburn Tigers. Because it is freezing on the plains. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I'm talking about the recruiting successes of Hugh Freeze and his staff. Last weekend, Auburn hosted their Big Cat Weekend, which is their annual recruiting weekend that is a big deal. They had 4- and 5-star players all over campus, and they made short work of it, signing 4 ESPN 300 players in the span of 3 days. In the class of 2025, they signed Anquan Fagans, the number 2 safety in the class, along with 4-star cornerback Blake Woodley, and they flipped 2 players from their arch rival, the Alabama Crimson Tide, Derek Smith and Antonio Coleman, both 4-star defensive players. Not only that, but they also got commitments from several players in the class of 2026, pushing them to number 5 overall in the recruiting rankings for the class of 2025, and number 1 in the nation right now for the class of 2026. Now, a lot of the credit has to go to the fact that in the offseason, Hugh Freeze has overhauled his staff and has made tremendous improvements there. He brought on Charles Kelly and DJ Durkin to run his defense. He brought back Wesley McGriff as cornerback coach, who is an awesome recruiter, but apparently didn't jive with the defensive staff from last season. But to me, the most incredible part of all of this, we knew that Hugh Freeze was a good recruiter. We saw what he did at Ole Miss. We saw what he did at Liberty. But the most impressive part about all of this is that he's able to do this at Auburn in the era of NIL. For a team coming off of a 6-7 season in which they lost at home to New Mexico State, got absolutely trounced in the bowl game against Maryland, and are picked to finish 10th in the conference out of 16 teams. Hugh Freeze isn't doing this at Georgia. He's not doing this at Alabama. He's not even doing this at Tennessee or Florida. He's doing this at Auburn in a time where the Potato Man, the one that we don't say his name, the guy that used to coach football on the blue carpet, had left a program in dire straits. And in his first season on the field, Hugh Freeze's bunch wasn't any more successful than the Potato Man was in his final season. And yet here we are, 3 weeks away from college football kicking off, and the Auburn Tigers have a top 5 recruiting class for 2025 and the number 1 class for 2026. And not only that, but things don't look like they're slowing down either. There's a big commitment happening tomorrow by the time this show comes out. Their class for 2025 may have even gotten better. They're also in the running to flip several prospects, including a highly touted quarterback who's currently pledged to Notre Dame. I can't imagine my Auburn Tigers having a top 3 recruiting class, and yet we may be on the precipice of actually seeing it. Hugh Freeze has that thing rolling in Auburn, Alabama. But he has to win some games on the field. He's got to get to at least 8 games this year. He needs to beat one of his main 2 rivals in order for this momentum to not only continue but even increase. And I think that maybe he's the man to do it. We'll see. From the world of college football, we go to the NBA. And finally, we'll hand out our In the Shed with Wes Anderson NBA draft rankings. I know that we're a little bit removed from the NBA draft and the NFL draft, but I've wanted to give you my rankings, my team rankings of how those drafts went down. And I haven't had an opportunity to do it because I haven't been in the shed recording shows. So, this is how we're rolling in the shed tonight. Some news organizations promise to give you tomorrow's news today, but hey, in my shed, we're giving you yesterday's news when we get around to it. So in this year's NBA draft, the Hawks had the number 1 pick overall, my Atlanta Hawks, and they took Zachary Reshashore, and his last name is just as hard to say as Worcestershire sauce. And I don't even know if I said it right. He's a shooting forward from France. He was a number 1 overall pick. The second pick went to the Washington Wizards, who selected another Frenchman, Alex Sarr, a forward. Reed Shepherd from Kentucky, a shooting guard, went 3rd overall to the Houston Rockets. And as everybody on planet Earth knows by this point, Bronny James went 55th overall to his daddy's team, the Los Angeles Lakers. Here are our In the Shed with Wes Anderson NBA Draft rankings. At number 5 overall, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. Yeah, surprise. I actually think that the Los Angeles Lakers did a good job in this year's draft. First of all, they got Dalton Knecht, the shooting guard from Tennessee, one of college basketball's most efficient and prolific scorers, and they got him at 18th overall in the first round. It was a steal. He's an excellent outside shooter, something that the Lakers desperately need. More floor spacing for LeBron. I expect him to be on the court this year for the Lakers. I thought that was a good pickup. And then they got Bronny James from USC with the 55th pick. I'm not here to trash the young man. It's no secret that he got picked 55th overall because LeBron James is his father. And LeBron James, in no uncertain terms, told the Lakers, "You will take my son in the second round." Now, Bronny James doesn't have a natural position in NBA basketball. He's not a prototypical point guard. He's not big enough to be a shooting guard. He's kind of a combo guard who's smaller, who has good defensive instincts. I think he does have NBA athleticism. Let's not forget that he was a big-time recruit out of high school before he had that terrible heart-related health incident. But it's going to take some time for him to round into form and for us to really know whether or not he has the chops to be an NBA player. But overall, I like what the Lakers did, and on the strength of them selecting Dalton Knecht and then making LeBron, who's one of the best players in the world today, happy, I have the Lakers at number 5. At number 4, I have the Utah Jazz. The Jazz took Cody Williams, a shooting guard from Colorado, Isaiah Collier, a point guard from USC, and Kyle Filipowski, the Karen of the NBA draft, a forward from Duke. I like Cody Williams' game at shooting guard from Colorado. I think that he's a player who's going to get playing time with the Jazz early. Isaiah Collier, I thought, was a steal. He didn't play as well at USC as was expected. He didn't go as high as he was supposed to go, but he's a player that I think has a lot of long-term potential. And look, I don't like Duke. I don't like Kyle Filipowski. I find him difficult to root for. I don't like his antics on the court, but he is an NBA stretch 4. And they drafted him to replace a player who they're actively looking to trade in Lauri Markkanen. I thought the Jazz did a good job overall. At number 3, I have the terrible Detroit Pistons. They selected Ron Holland II, a guard from the G League Ignite team, and a second shooting guard, Cam Spencer, from 2-time national champion UConn. I think anytime you're drafting a player from UConn, coached by Dan Hurley, from a back-to-back national championship team, you're getting a player who knows how to win. I like Cam Spencer's game. I think that he's going to be a role player in the future. And I think that Ron Holland has a lot of upside. Detroit is in the place where they just have to accumulate talent. They just have to get guys that can score the ball and hope that they can have a coach who can structure an offense and put pieces together and work out a rotation where they can be successful. I think they had a good draft. Number 2 overall, I have the Memphis Grizzlies. Yeah, I have the Grizzlies. They took Zach Edey, the center from Purdue, the best center in college basketball the last couple of years. And they got a player that I'm high on, Jalen Wells, the shooting guard from Washington State. I think that Jalen Wells is a player that can develop into a reliable 3-and-D role player in the NBA, and I can't wait to see what Zach Edey is. I think he's going to be a 10-8, 12-10 type guy his rookie season, but he's the type of player that fits the culture in Memphis, that fits what they're trying to do, a rim protector, somebody that can take up space, that can rebound, that can control the paint, an enforcer. I like what the Grizzlies did. I have them second overall. And the number one team when it comes to this year's NBA draft, I have the Houston Rockets. The Rockets got shooting guard Reed Sheppard from Kentucky with the number 3 overall pick. And they got a shooting guard from Arizona whose last name is Larson with their second round selection. I don't know how to say his first name. Is it Pele? Maybe it's Pele. I might have the wrong sport altogether. I don't know. I watched the kid play twice when he was in college. I think that he has potential, but the pick here is Reed Sheppard. If you watched Reed Sheppard play in the Summer League at all, you understand that this guy is NBA ready. And for a team like Houston that was on the fringes of playoff positioning last season, that has a lot of young talent, that has a defense and discipline-oriented head coach, this just seems to fit. The kid is going to be a bucket from day one. When he came to Kentucky, he was supposed to be a 3 or 4 year player. He turned out to be a one and done because he's an absolute gym rat. He shot the ball better in his 1 year at Kentucky than he ever did in high school. He's a three-point shooter. He can play off the dribble, and even at 6'2", he's got athleticism. His skin looks like mine, so you might say that he's deceptively athletic. But he lit it up in summer ball. I think he was a great pick and a great fit for Houston and what they're trying to accomplish. I have the Houston Rockets as the team that did the best in this year's NBA draft. And those are my rankings. Number 1, the Houston Rockets. Number 2, the Memphis Grizzlies. Number 3, the Detroit Pistons. Number 4, the Utah Jazz. And number 5, the Los Angeles Lakers. What do you think about those rankings? How off the wall are they? I know they don't look like any of the other rankings that you find out there. I'm looking at different things. I'm looking at fit. I'm looking at what a team is trying to accomplish. Do you agree with my rankings? Do you disagree? Who do you think had the best draft out of all the NBA teams this season? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4. I would love to hear from you. When it comes to the NFL draft, of course, we know that quarterback Caleb Williams from USC went number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels went 2nd overall to the Washington football team. I refuse to call them that ridiculous name. Drake May, the quarterback from North Carolina, went 3rd overall to the Patriots. Wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State went to the Cardinals at 4th. And offensive tackle Joe Alt from Notre Dame went to the Chargers at 5th. From our In the Shed with Wes Anderson NBA draft rankings, we go to our In the Shed with Wes Anderson NFL draft rankings. And at 5th overall, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, who used their first-round pick at 18 overall to go with Amarius Mims, a tackle out of Georgia to protect Joe Burrow. In the second round, they got Chris Jenkins, a defensive tackle from national champion Michigan. Wide receiver Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round, along with McKinley Jackson, a defensive tackle from Texas A&M. They got Eric All, a tight end from Iowa, in the 4th round. Josh Newton, a cornerback from TCU, in the 5th. Tanner McLaughlin, a tight end from Arizona, in the 6th. Cedric Johnson, an edge rusher from Ole Miss, in the 6th. And Matt Lee, a center from Miami, in the 7th round. And the reason that I have the Bengals in the top 5 when it comes to my NFL draft rankings is because of what they did top to bottom. The way that they addressed the trenches. Drafting an offensive tackle in the 1st round, a center in the 7th, defensive tackles in the 3rd round, and in the 2nd round as well. And I think they got some good players. Amarius Mims is going to be a starter for years. Chris Jenkins was a good pickup. I like that they added another receiver in Jermaine Burton. And I love the pick of Eric All at tight end in the 4th round. Anytime you get a tight end from Iowa, you have a player who is tough-nosed and knows how to play the game of football, knows how to throw a block. Last year, the Bengals were without Joe Burrow. He is back and better than ever, ready to go with his Slim Shady haircut. I have the Bengals at 5th overall. At 4th overall, I have the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals used the 4th pick in the draft to get wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, the Ohio State University. Rest in power, Meemaw. Also in the 1st round at 27th overall, they got Darius Robinson, an edge rusher from Missouri. In the 2nd round, they got Max Melton, a cornerback from Rutgers. In the 3rd round, Trey Benson, a running back from Florida State, and Isaiah Adams, a tackle from Illinois, as well as Tip Ryman, a tight end from Illinois as well. In the 4th round, they drafted Dadrion Taylor Demerson, a safety from Texas Tech. In the 5th round, they took Xavier Thompson, an edge rusher from Clemson. And look, you can look at a draft from top to bottom, and you can grade it a number of ways. For me, this one was easy. The Arizona Cardinals got Marvin Harrison Jr. They have a top 5 draft class. That's how good a football player and a wide receiver I think he is. I think at the NFL level, he will be every bit a game breaker as he was in college. He's 6'3", 209 pounds. He's lightning quick. He's an excellent route runner and certainly can take the top off of a defense. I also like what they did in the 1st round at the 27th overall pick, getting the edge rusher from Missouri. I think that he has the ability to contribute to the pass rush on day 1. And I thought that Trey Benson was a solid pick in the 3rd round. I have the Arizona Cardinals at 4th overall. At 3rd overall, I have the Chicago Bears. Of course, the Bears had the number 1 pick in the draft this year, selecting Caleb Williams, the quarterback from USC, trading their former starting quarterback Justin Fields to Pittsburgh. They also had the 9th pick overall, and they got Rome Odunze, the wide receiver from Washington. In the 3rd round, they took an offensive tackle from Yale that I've never heard of. In the 4th round, they selected a punter from Iowa. In the 5th round, they got Austin Booker, an edge rusher from Kansas. And that is the entirety of their draft. Their draft class had a kid from Yale, and a punter, and a guy from Kansas to play football. Not round ball, but football. And yet I ranked them at 3rd overall. And the reason why is not because I'm super high on Caleb Williams. I don't think that he's Patrick Mahomes Jr., okay? I just don't. If I was going to pick a quarterback in this year's draft, I would have taken Jaden Daniels. I would have taken Michael Penix Jr. I'm not sold yet that Caleb Williams is going to be a world beater on day 1. I've been wrong before. Ask my wife. But the reason I ranked the Bears 3rd overall is because they had an opportunity to change the trajectory of their football team by having 2 picks in the top 10, and they used them in the way that you're supposed to use them. To get the best players that you possibly can in positions that matter, they drafted their quarterback for the future and a game-breaking wide receiver. I have the Bears, number 3. At number 2 overall, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills did not have a pick in the 1st round, but with the 1st pick of the 2nd round, they got Keon Coleman, a wide receiver from Florida State. And they also drafted Cole Bishop, a safety from Utah. In the 4th round, the Bills got Ray Davis, a running back from Kentucky. In the 5th round, they took Cedric Van Pron-Gronger, a center from Georgia. In the 5th round, they took a linebacker from Washington who has a very difficult name to pronounce. And I actually like their 6th round pick. Believe it or not, they took Tylen Grable, a tackle from UFC. I have them ranked 2nd overall because I feel like the Buffalo Bills addressed needs. They desperately need wide receivers. They went and got Keon Coleman, who I thought was a steal as a 2nd round draft pick. I like their selection of Ray Davis, the running back from Kentucky, in the 4th round. He easily could have been a 3rd or 2nd round player in other years' drafts. And they selected 2 offensive linemen. I like what the Bills did. I have them number 2 overall. And at number 1 overall, the team that I think had the best draft top to bottom in this year's NFL draft, the Los Angeles Chargers. Yeah, I'm going with Jim Harbaugh's squad. Jim Harbaugh went from winning a national championship to coaching a team in the NFL who, in my estimation, had the best draft this year. At 5th overall, they took Joe Alt and tackle from Notre Dame. In the 2nd round, they took Ladd McConkey, the wide receiver from Georgia. In the 3rd round, they took a linebacker out of Michigan, Junior Colson. In the 4th round, they got a defensive tackle from Alabama, Justin Eboigbe. In the 6th round, they added a running back from my neck of the woods, Kamani Vidal from Troy. And in the 7th round, they added 2 wide receivers, Brendan Rice from USC and Cornelius Johnson from Michigan. And look, this isn't the splashiest draft class. They had the 5th overall pick, and they took a tackle, which is exactly what you're supposed to do with the 5th overall pick. And I think that he's going to be a starter in the front line for the Chargers for years. And I love what they did in the 2nd round. I think Ladd McConkey is a wide receiver who fits their culture, who apparently in practices already is turning heads. I think that he'll be a contributor as a rookie. And they got winning football players. They drafted Junior Colson from Michigan, Justin Eboigbe from Alabama, Cam Hart from Notre Dame. And they didn't mind taking a couple swings late in the draft, which is what you're supposed to do in rounds 6 and 7. By taking underrated running backs and wide receivers that didn't have the most stunning careers in college but have NFL potential, I think that this draft is a Jim Harbaugh draft. A head football coach that knows the game of college football, that knows how to find talent from a college football field. And I think that it showed up. I like what they did. I have their draft ranked number 1 overall. So those are my rankings. Those are my In the Shed with Wes Anderson NFL draft rankings. The Los Angeles Chargers number 1, the Buffalo Bills number 2, the Chicago Bears number 3, the Arizona Cardinals number 4, and the Cincinnati Bengals number 5. What say you, my babies? My tools, my people, what do you think about my rankings? How far off am I? Who do you have number 1 overall? What was the most surprising part of the NFL draft for you? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter at intheshed4 and let me know. That's all the news in the world of sports this week. Let's switch to this. The news in the world of the paranormal, where our first story takes us to Mars. Yeah, my babies, buckle up. We going to Mars. Elon Musk will be proud. NASA's Perseverance Mars rover finds possible signs of ancient red planet life. NASA's Perseverance rover may have found signs of ancient life in a rock on Mars. The mission team's scientists are ecstatic, but remain cautious as further analysis is needed to confirm the discovery. The rover has come across an intriguing arrowhead-shaped rock that hosts chemical signatures and structures that could have been formed by microbial life billions of years ago, when Mars was significantly wetter than it is today. Inside the rock, which scientists have nicknamed Chayava Falls, which seems like a ridiculous nickname, but I digress. Perseverance's instruments detected organic compounds, which are precursors to the chemistry of life as we know it, allegedly. Wisping through the length of the rock are veins of calcium sulfate, which are mineral deposits that suggest water, also essential for life, once ran through the rock. The rover also found dozens of millimeter-sized splotches, each surrounding a black ring and mimicking the appearance of leopard spots. These rings contain iron and phosphate, which are also seen on Earth as a result of microbe-led chemical reactions. These spots are a big surprise, David Flannery, an astrobiologist and member of the Perseverance science team from the Queensland University of Technology in Australia, said in a statement. And it's also what I said in a statement when I was 2 years old and got chicken pox. These spots are a big surprise. I digress. On Earth, these types of features in rocks are often associated with the fossilized record of microbes living in the subsurface. We've never seen these three things together on Mars before, Morgan Cable, a scientist on the Perseverance team, said in a video NASA posted to YouTube today. Chayava Falls sits at the edge of an ancient 400-meter-wide river valley named Newfoundland Vallis. Scientists suspect this ancient channel was carved out long ago due to water gushing into Jezero crater. And they just out here making up words for these things on Mars because I can't hardly read any of this. Language is hard. Newfoundland Vallis runs along the inner wall of this region. In one possible scenario, mud that already possessed organic compounds got dumped into the valley and later cemented into the Shayava Falls rock, which Perseverance sampled on July 21st. A second episode of water oozing into the formed rock would have created the object's calcium sulfate veins and black ring spots the team sees today. Or possibly chickenpox. To be clear, the rock's visible features aren't irrefutable evidence of ancient microbial life on Mars. Not yet, at least. It is possible, for instance, that the observed calcium sulfate entered the rock at uninhabitably high temperatures, perhaps during a nearby volcanic event. However, whether such non-biological chemical reactions could have resulted in the observed black ring spots is an open question, the scientists say. This trip through the Newfoundland Vallis certainly paid off, as we've found something we've never seen before, which will give our scientists so much to study, Nicola Fox, the Associate Administrator of NASA's Science Mission Directorate, said in a statement. We've zapped that rock with lasers and x-rays and imaged it literally day and night from just about every angle imaginable, Ken Farley, Perseverance Project scientist of Caltech in California, said in a statement. Scientifically, Perseverance has nothing more to give. To fully grasp what really unfolded in the ancient valley billions of years ago, scientists are keen to get the Shayava Falls sample to Earth, where it can be scrutinized with powerful instruments that Perseverance Limited Suite doesn't have. The complex Mars sample return effort, however, has run into many snags in recent months after its cost spiked to $11 billion to return a rock from Mars. $11 billion. I think that money got sent to the Ukraine. In its current form, the program requires multiple launches to Mars to place a vehicle on the red planet, after which Perseverance will travel to the vehicle and drop off its collected samples, or pop those samples over to a retrieval helicopter that can complete the handoff. Then, an ascender would launch the samples into orbit, where a spacecraft would collect them and return them to Earth. NASA assessed various simpler alternatives from industry and academic groups and awarded $1.5 million contracts to 7 companies looking into the endeavor. 3 of the agency's own research centers are carrying out studies as well. So, with incredibly impressive and state-of-the-art technology, with the full weight of NASA behind the mission, after many years of strenuous effort and study and engineering, we have located a rock on Mars that it would cost $11.5 billion to transport back to Earth, that may show that possibly, at one point, there might have been microbial life on Mars. Look, I could have told you the same thing for $35, okay? Is there life on Mars? Hey, Wes, is there life on Mars? Maybe there was, and also maybe there wasn't. It's basically where we're at after all that I have just read to you, my people. And look, I think it's a really cool story, all right? I like it when we make discoveries on other planets and find it to be noteworthy and interesting. And I thought it was cool that they have now discovered that there are things existing on Mars that are necessary for life to have occurred. Elon Musk read this story and was very excited because he wants to have us all, well, maybe not all of us, but he wants to have a colony of us on Mars in the next 30 years. Which makes you go, what does that man know? Would you want to live on Mars, my babies? Would you be willing to be a part of Elon Musk's Mars colony? That's what this article has turned into. It started out with a possible discovery of life on Mars. And instead we're ending it with a question. One that will become a poll on Twitter, no doubt. Find us there at In the Shed 4. Would you be willing to be a part of an Elon Musk funded colony on the Red Planet? From Mars we go to Brazil for our next story. Sharks off the coast of Brazil test positive for cocaine. Researchers in Brazil have found traces of cocaine in over a dozen sharks near Rio de Janeiro, alarming activists. Researchers reported finding traces of cocaine in the muscles and livers of 13 Brazilian sharp-nosed sharks collected from coastal waters near Rio de Janeiro, with concentrations up to 100 times higher than those reported in other aquatic species. And of course, the sharks that had the cocaine were sharp-nosed sharks. That's right out of Central Casting. It's too on the nose, but also up to 100 times higher than those reported in other aquatic species. Are there other aquatic species out here on that powder? On the devil's dandruff? Over here just getting a bump and taking off into the ocean? Onward. The findings in the latest issue of Science of the Total Environments are very important and potentially worrying, said Sarah Noves, a marine extocologist at the Marine and Environmental Sciences Center of the Polytechnic University of Lara. And imagine, as we so often do on this show, that Mrs. Sarah Noves, who may or may not be a married lady, I don't know her personally, but let's assume that she is not, and she's on a first date. And the man across the table from her says, Sarah, what do you do for a living? And she says, well, I study the trace levels of cocaine found in aquatic species. I think she gets a second date. There's a good chance. There's been concern among wildlife activists that drugs dumped into the ocean by smugglers could affect marine life, especially given the large quantities of cocaine found around Florida and in South and Central America. Around Rio de Janeiro, cocaine likely enters the sea through drainage from illegal labs where the drug is processed, as well as from untreated sewage from drug users. Researchers from the Oswaldo Cruz Institute in Brazil bought the sharks from small fishing vessels that target the species and others, then conducted tests on them. All samples tested positive with cocaine concentrations up to 100 times higher than those previously reported in other aquatic species. And I'm just imagining a bottlenose dolphin on cocaine. They already doing flips. Exposure to cocaine could severely impact shark health, potentially damaging their DNA, impairing their ability to metabolize fats, and causing behavioral changes, like more dancing, the finding reveals. Considering the psychotropic effects of drugs of abuse on vertebrates, behavioral changes may occur which, although sublethal, could impact the species' survival in ways that remain unexplored, the researchers wrote. The sharp-nosed shark is relatively small, growing to under 3 feet in length, and primarily feeds on small fish and squid. These findings are indicative of potential human health risks, as sharks are highly consumed in the state of Rio de Janeiro, in fact throughout the entire Brazilian territory and indeed worldwide, the researchers noted. So, you mean to tell me that even the sharks off the coast of Brazil are out here just goosed up, out here swimming around with an axe to grind, buzzing out their minds with 3 rows full of razor-sharp teeth? Also of note, the Secret Service could not find out who had the cocaine in the White House, but Sarah in Brazil can find the sharks that have the cocaine there. I don't know if you're interested, Sarah, but I think there are some openings in the Secret Service. One thing we do on this show better than any other news show in the world especially those recorded in the shed, but I'll say anywhere in the world, as we cover the animal kingdom like nobody else. And believe it or not, one of the things I get the most hate on when it comes to our show, I get negative feedback every time I do it, but I don't care. I'm going to keep on doing it, is when I share a story like this about the animal world in the paranormal news. People write in, that is not paranormal. There's nothing paranormal about it. I think they want ghosts and vampires and werewolves and dogman. And hey, I give that to you. But I'm also going to give you sharks on cocaine. You had Cocaine Bear. I can't wait when sci-fi comes out with cocaine sharks. And I'm watching. From the ocean off the coast of Brazil, we go to the ocean off the coast of Canada for our next story. Mysterious shipwreck washes ashore in Newfoundland, which I didn't know was actually in Canada. I guess it's been a while since I paid attention to world geography. But here we are in Newfoundland, where a mystery ship has washed up on the shore. Ever since a shipwreck washed ashore in the remote Canadian coastal area of Cape Ray on the island of Newfoundland in late January, it's been causing a stir in the small community of about 250 people. Residents have posed for pictures with parts of the wooden ship, which a local hunter spotted and which is believed to be from the 19th century. And that's the 1800s, in case you didn't know. That's the 1800s. They've encouraged the authorities to secure the structure, and they've speculated on social media about its mysterious origins. The post on a community page on Facebook, naturally, caught the attention of a local photographer, Corey Purchase, who lives 15 minutes from the area. He used a drone to take an aerial photo showing the scale of the vessel, which he estimates to be about 90 feet in length. The drone put it into perspective for sure, he said. It was a pretty amazing find. Shipwrecks in this region aren't that uncommon. There probably have been thousands around the coast of Newfoundland in the past 500 years, said Jamie Brake, the provisional archaeologist. It has just such a long history of ship traffic, Dr. Brake said. Cape Ray is an exposed, treacherous shoreline with fog and reefs. There's a lighthouse now that protects mariners, but that wasn't always there. Still, experts say that it's rare for such a large ship to wash ashore in Cape Ray Cove near the Gulf of St. Lawrence. It's possible that the ship was washed ashore by Hurricane Fiona, a Category 4 storm that destroyed about 100 homes along the coast of southwestern Newfoundland in September 2022, said Neil Burgess, the president of the Shipwreck Preservation Society of Newfoundland and Labrador. Mr. Burgess plans to survey the ship this weekend to learn more about its origins. Just from looking at the pictures captured by Mr. Purchase and others, he suspects it might be from the 1800s because of some of the construction details. For instance, it's held together by large tree nails, wooden pegs usually made of dry compressed timber, and copper pegs, which he said were common in ships of that era. There have been about a dozen recorded shipwrecks in Cape Ray area in the last 3 centuries, Mr. Burgess said. During a survey of the ship, he's hoping to determine the type of wood used and how old it is. That way there's a better chance of identifying the shipwreck. Such a discovery would be a local victory, he said. People have stories in their family of shipwrecks that have happened 100 or 150 years ago, Mr. Burgess said. It's always a bit of a mystery to put a name to the shipwreck that washes up on the beach. If nothing is done to manage the wreck, it's possible that it could be washed back out to the ocean or pushed further onto shore, he said. What ultimately happens to the ship is up to the Provincial Archaeology Office. Dr. Brake said that the office had not yet made a determination about next steps. He said they would look into the survey this weekend with an open mind. In the past, the government has buried shipwrecks in the sand so that they can be preserved if someone wants to dig them up and research them at a later time. And that seems like a fun way to approach a shipwreck, government of Newfoundland. Hey, we just gonna bury it in the sand. If you feel like digging it up later, you have yourself a little treasure hunt. I dig it. Some people in Cape Ray, however, have posted on the Facebook community page that they hope the shipwreck can be used as some sort of tourist attraction. They feared that the sunken vessel, which appeared to be in about 3 to 7 feet of water along the shoreline, was drifting back out into the water and called this week for someone to help secure it. Sean Bath and Trevor Croft from Clean Harbors Initiative, an organization of mostly volunteer divers that help clean up debris after storms, volunteered their services. They use ropes and straps to secure the vessel to prevent it from drifting, Mr. Croft said in an interview. They even took underwater footage of it so there's recorded evidence of the ship in case it were to wash away in a storm, he said. Speaking of the mysterious ship, Mr. Croft said, "This is something that probably hasn't been seen for 100 to 200 years. It's pretty exciting when you get to see that for the first time." So, a mystery ship, most probably from the 1800s, has washed up into 7 feet of water off the coast of Newfoundland, which we have just learned together is an island that belongs to Canada. I think I knew that somewhere in the recesses of my mind. But I digress. I thought this was a pretty cool story. Imagine being someone that lives on that island, and then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and there is an old ship that has washed ashore. You don't know where it's from. You don't know the origins. It is, in fact, a mystery. They're speculating. They're trying to search and identify where it came from. And hopefully it was a good 1800s ship, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying, I'm just saying I hope for their sake that it's one that you want to find the identity of. Maybe it belonged to a pirate, or a family who was on a cruise, or to some early settlers. Let's hope for that. I love the fact that the government just wants to bury it in the sand, and that they let people just go out there with some rope and just tie it down and scuba dive all around it and take pictures and fly drones over it, even though it's like 150 or 200 years old. They're like, hey, you want to have fun with this ship? They washed up, go for it. Do what you want to do. Canadians are a different breed. They're some pretty chill folks. And that's why they listen to this show. Shout out to you, Canada. Eh? For our last story this week, we go from a mystery ship off the coast of Canada to you, our listeners. That's right, my babies. We're doing something different for the last story in the world of paranormal news this week. Your paranormal experiences. Because a while back on Twitter, or I should say X, formerly known as Twitter, I posed a simple question to you. Have you ever seen a ghost? And I got some really interesting stories out of it. Had some fun conversations, and I want to share some of those stories with you. These are authentic In the Shed with Wes Anderson listener ghost stories. The first listener says, I keep seeing my grandmother who died about 16 years ago. And I don't know if that would be comforting or agonizing or terrifying or all the above. I don't know. I have lost both of my grandmothers, most recently my Meemaw a year ago in September, and I think about her every day. I end every show with the hearty Meemaw we made it because she listened to every episode. I would love, more than anything, to see my Meemaw again. But I don't know if I want to see her as a ghost. Not sure about that one. The next listener said, I have seen the same ghost twice. Around 1996 and 97 in Edmonton, Canada. Another Canadian. At my friend's house. He lived in the basement. Both times were when I slept over. We used to stay up late playing Super Nintendo. Solid choice. Him and his brother shared the same room and had beds on the opposite sides of the room. I was sleeping in his brother's bed and woke up in the middle of the night because I had to pee. I thought I saw my friend sit up and walk to the washroom, which was out the door and to the left of his room. It was that gray ghostly color that people resemble when you see them in the darkness without lights on. I waited a while and ended up falling asleep. The next day I asked him, how long were you in the washroom? I saw you walk in, but I fell asleep before you came back. He nonchalantly said, oh, that was probably the ghost. I figured he was joking. Second time was months later, again, around 1996 and 97, when we fell asleep in the living room. He was on the opposite couch, and again I woke up and thought that I'd saw him sit up and walk to the washroom. I asked the next day if there really was a ghost, and he told me that the old lad that lived there died in the basement a long time ago before his parents bought the house. I shrugged and never really thought about it again. It was interesting because it looked like it was moving at regular walking speed, but the movement of the legs and arms swinging didn't really match up with the distance it was moving. And that was it. Never saw it again. And that story is both a little freaky, but also hilarious. Because the ghost that you saw just had to pee. Apparently this was a very well-hydrated ghost because every time that you saw him, he was going to the bathroom. Another listener says, I saw my grandfather when I was younger. 2 times. He passed when I was 6. He was a huge part of my life. Then my grandmother, who was my best friend. She helped raise me. She passed 17 years ago. I saw her 2 years ago. Even had a conversation with her. I never believed in any of this until then. Until it happened. I know some don't, but those experiences will be with me forever. There are stories behind both, but many have a hard time with them. I know what I saw. And that's wild. That's wild that this listener has seen both his grandfather and his grandmother more than 15 years after they passed away, and even had a conversation with his grandmother. Was that her ghost? Was that her spirit? Is there a difference? Either way, it's a tremendous and interesting story. Another listener says, when I was working at a nursing home, a lady I was looking after died. A week later, I saw her walk from the nurse's station and back through the door of her room. It didn't scare me. And that definitely would have scared me. That would have scared me a lot. I would have been like Forrest Gump. I would have kept running and running. Yeah. I'd have been out of there. I'd have been gone. Another listener says, I was remodeling the basement apartment of a country store that my deceased grandmother had owned. I stepped out the back door and looked up at the windows and watched her walk past. A lot of grandmothers on this episode of In the Shed with Wes Anderson Listener Ghost Stories. A lot of grandmothers. A lot of people seeing their ghostly grandmothers. The store was owned by his grandmother, and he was cleaning it out and looked up in a window and saw her there. I think that one might lean more toward comfort for me. That one I would be okay with, which I don't know if it ever would be necessarily scary to see your grandmother in ghostly form. Surprising, alarming, astonishing. Might make you uncomfortable, but this one seems to be a comfort thing. Another listener says, I've never seen a ghost, but something knocked a cigarette out of my mouth at Warwick Castle. It flew about 15 feet from me. And that probably wasn't a gust of wind, if it went that far. But I don't know what it was. Possibly a ghost. Another listener says, I have experienced what some would interpret as ghosts and paranormal phenomena. Do phenomena. Do phenomena. Do da. But I believe they had nothing to do with the dead and have a simple explanation. Either carbon monoxide poisoning, infrasound, or some sensory confusion. Either or all could be possible explanations. And that's an interesting perspective. Somebody that will flat out say, I've experienced what people would interpret as paranormal phenomena. I already did the song. But I think it was something else. And I think it's always a good place to start from if you first try to rule out possible explanations. Interesting perspective. Another listener says, I've never seen a ghost, but I have felt one. It banged 3 times on the bottom of my daughter's bed. Very spooky. I will never forget it. And I imagine she won't either, depending on how old she was. And I certainly wouldn't either. You can come after me, but don't come near my kids. I don't care if you a ghost or not. Papa Duck don't play that. I got they back like fat strap, you know what I'm saying? Another listener says, I haven't so much as seen a ghost, but I've been aware prior to or after a series of things happening that they are, as of yet, unexplainable. Call it synchronicity, call it I don't know. I just take it as it comes, and I'm grateful. It isn't spooky or concerning, but they've been very distinct, specific scenarios that are indeed hard to explain. And I get that. I totally get that. I've had all kinds of experiences that I couldn't explain. Things have happened that are beyond my comprehension and that aren't natural, and they don't seem to be of this world. The next listener says, yes, I lived in a haunted house for almost 4 years. My 4 to 8-year-old self thought it was the best thing ever until I used the ghost to freak out a friend. She always bullied me, so I invited her for a sleepover. Funny, she never came back and never spoke to me again. Win-win. And that's hilarious. That's a new one for me. I've never heard of somebody using a ghost to take care of a bully. But I dig it. Thank you for sharing. Another listener says, I've never seen a ghost. However, as weird as it sounds, I sure would like to. Biggest guilty pleasure is every ghost or Bigfoot show on TV. I know people and have friends that insist they have, and I believe that they believe it. I need to hear something, see or feel something to believe. And I'm with you. I'm right there with you, listener. Another listener says, I've seen a ghost horse as it walked out of the barn and disappeared around the corner. I heard horses having fun in the indoor for turnout when all were, in fact, settling down for bed. You only heard it in the turnout area, and of course no horses were there. Also had a lady walk out of my kitchen into the computer room. She paused, left me with a feeling of kinship, then faded as she walked off toward the outer wall. I was the only one awake at the time. Those are my 2 experiences. And like I said, nobody covers the animal world like we do on In the Shed with Wes Anderson. We got cocaine sharks and ghost horses. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing with us. Another listener wrote, yes, I have seen a ghost. The house I grew up in had one. No joke. Usually we would hear footsteps upstairs when no one was there. Once it imitated my dad's voice calling me when I was in the basement. I went upstairs and my mom told me that he was at a church meeting. It did that a few times. It would turn lights on and off. And once, it locked my bedroom door from the inside. We had to get a ladder and climb in through a window. The thing is, my door didn't have a lock on it to begin with. Lots of things like that over 20 years. My sister saw it once as a shadow figure, as did my brother. We would find arrowheads in the woods near our house. I always wondered if there was a burial ground in the area or something like that. I eventually moved away and never had any experiences again. And you might have had a demon. Because that one seems a little antagonistic and a little frightening. And that doesn't come across to me as playful if it is locking you in your room, imitating your dad's voice. That might have been a demon. The arrowhead thing is interesting. That's a connection worth investigating if there are burial grounds nearby. But that experience would have terrified me. Another listener writes, I had a poltergeist very interested in me from being a few months old baby until about 10 years old when we moved houses. I remember it being a black shape at night. My mom was the only other person who saw it. The weirdest things would happen. That thing moved me from the bed to the passage floor while my mom was hanging up clothes that had been washed. I was a 3 or 4 month old and couldn't walk yet. Plus, I was still wrapped in the blankets I was on the bed. Mom just heard a thump and I didn't even cry. I'm not freaked out by the paranormal anymore. And that's wild that this thing picked you up off of the bed and put you on the floor. I'm glad you were not hurt. That's an interesting story. Our next listener ghost story says, I've seen a full body apparition of my grandfather. I've seen spirits walk alongside the highway. I've heard women talking inside my house several times when no one else was there. I've seen a recently deceased uncle drive past me in his truck and then vanish when I looked back in the rearview mirror. So again, a lot of seeing of family members that have passed away. Although if I saw the whole car disappear, again, call me a fraidy cat. I'm up out of there. Our next listener writes, they don't need me to see them. I'm able to catch their drift if they want to get through. An apparition that looked like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in flames appeared in my closet in Pinellas County, Florida at the moment RFK died. I screamed bloody murder at the time because I was 12. And that is very interesting. And I would have screamed bloody murder also, even though I am not 12. An apparition that looked like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in flames appeared in this person's closet at the moment that he died. That is remarkable. Our next listener ghost story is, I sure have seen ghosts. I'm in process of writing a book that explains everything. I'm from the 1870 Old West era. I have had numerous experiences with the same. My book takes readers from my current time to my life in another place and era, even helping fight the New Mexico-Lincoln County cattle war, plus riding at the side of Billy the Kid. I do go beyond this, though, to teach about my life as a psychic medium, paranormalist, and how to handle it, the tools I use, the places I've been, the things I've seen. And I guess this person is talking about having a past life, is the way that I read that story. I hope I'm not misrepresenting you, dear listener, but that's the way it came across. I don't know how to feel about that. Not sure I believe in past lives. I think you get one life to live, but I do respect your opinion and appreciate you writing into the show. Another listener writes, I have hundreds of ghost stories by now. One of my favorites is probably seeing an apparition in the Indiana State Sanatorium one night while giving a tour. I thought it was someone in my group until I chased them down, and they vanished. And not to beat a dead horse, because it might return as a ghost. But if I'm giving a tour and I see someone and chase them down and they vanish, hey, I vanish too. Another listener writes, I've never seen a ghost, but I feel them regularly. You know that feeling when somebody's close by, but you can't see or hear them? It's a lot like that, though it is almost always my guardian spirits that I sense. Very interesting. I hope you enjoyed our In the Shed with Wes Anderson listener ghost stories. So many of you responded to that post on X that it became a thread of storytelling, which I found to be riveting. I appreciate you sharing your stories and your experiences with me, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing each other's experiences as well. You're always invited and welcome to email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com with any ghost stories or any paranormal experiences that you've had. I would love to read your experiences and share them with our audience more regularly, even at the beginning of our show when we do listener emails. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 73. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports, or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Join our membership club at patreon.com/intheshed4. Look for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to follow us on X at InTheShed4 and subscribe to our YouTube channel at In the Shed with Wes Anderson 6670. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, rank the top 10 NFL quarterbacks for this season, and investigate together the Bermuda Triangle. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scouts. Meemaw, we made it!
We sure did.